Mandamus.wmv, and I am a United States congressional candidate for the state of Maryland 4th District. We're standing out here today in the nation's capital at the United States District Court for the District of Columbia. Today we're going to be honoring a great pioneer in the family rights movement in Nancy Shaefer. We're filing what's called a writ of mandamus against Kathleen Sebelius of the Health and Human Services. Nancy Shaefer was a state senator for the state of Georgia who was a strong advocate for the family rights movement. She sponsored a bill, Senate Bill 415, that provided a regulatory process so that state and local agencies would have a proper guideline when it comes to handling and dealing with the issues of family. This particular writ that we're filing against the Health and Human Services Secretary, Kathleen Sebelius, really is right down the alley in terms of what Nancy Shaefer is all about. For those of you who don't know, a writ basically is asking a court to perform an act or to enforce a provision of law. This particular writ of mandamus is actually focused on a specific law most people have no idea even exists. But that law is called the Paperwork Reduction Act. It's over 20 years old, signed into law by actually Jimmy Carter. Now, you may or may not be aware, but any type of federal program that you're involved in, whether it's at the federal level or whether it's at the state level, you are in some capacity dealing with the Paper Reduction Act. This law is the law that regulates the communications between the federal government and the individual taxpayer who are utilizing the program. Every federal document that is sent out amongst taxpayers have to be an authentic document authorized by the Office of Management and Budget. On the top right-hand corner of these documents, you will find what's called an OMB number. It stands for Office of Management and Budget number. Those are authorized numbers. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, what does that got to do with the written? What does that have to do with the family rights movement? It has a whole lot to do with the movement. Why? Because I would guess that 5 to 10% of all of your CPS cases, your child support cases, all of your federal social services program cases, 5 to 10% are based on fraud. Now, fraud, fraudulent documents, counterfeit instruments, and most litigants, most individuals have no idea that their case is based on fraud. When your case is based on fraud and the use of counterfeit documents are in play, you will never ever receive any form of due process because your case is not an authentic case. So this particular writ right here that we're filing today actually enforces Kathleen Sebelius of the Health and Human Services Department to remove these documents once they have been made known that these documents exist in the public domain. They have a duty under the PRA law to remove these documents out of circulation. How do we know this? How do we know it exists? Well, in this particular case, it actually details a story, true story of a family that fought all the way to the United States Supreme Court to keep their family together, only to realize once they got at the federal level that their case was actually based on fraud. That rendered everything and every decision in the lower court moot. So what is the family to do? What families have to do is that they have to contact the federal agencies that have oversight over that particular program and sit down with Health and Human Services regulators and have those regulators hold in check the state and private collectors who are actually using these documents. It is the responsibility of federal regulators and the Office of Management and Budget, Information and Regulatory Affairs Agency that has the responsibility to manage the flow of authentic documents and remove fraudulent documents from the public domain. Once they've been made known, and how do they move these documents out the public domain? They actually issue court-ordered cease and desist orders directed directly at those agencies. So today is a milestone in the family rights movement, because in honoring Nancy Shaefer, we're going to frame and call this particular writ the Shaefer Writ. The Shaefer Writ will immortalize Nancy Shaefer's legacy because it addresses the issue of regulatory processes and enforcing the law that is right on the books. What I'd like to do is introduce a gentleman who's with the grassroots organization. The grassroots organization is called Stop Child Abuse for Profit. His name is Dave Carlin. He's out of Maryland, and I'm going to allow him to come forward and talk on behalf of his cause. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Dave Carlin, and Nancy Shaefer was a pioneer, and there's a lot of controversy surrounding the murder-suicide that took place over her loss of life. And what we're here about is to honor her. She was a pioneer. She took the efforts to make it public that there's something wrong with our CPS system. The one issue that I'd like to bring to heart is when you get into the CPS system and into the judiciary, we have too many lawyers in our legislation that are now affecting our policies. Okay, now what's basically happening is they have taken control of certain committees inside of our state level and federal level. For an example, the U.S. Senate Impeachment Trial Committee, the people that are supposed to enforce and protect the public interest, they're not. We have 12 members, 8 of them are lawyers. Now, how can the public interest be served to protect the public? The key here is this little sign right here, vote the lawyers out. If we can do that and put the legislation back in the hands of the public, we might be able to correct some of the problems inside the CPS. The problem is the courts have become such a big industry for child protective services. When they take away the parents, there's a whole bunch of other issues that come into play. Children actually suffer from many things. They get into alcohol, drugs, teen pregnancies, suicide rates go up, and suicide rates bring in another issue, which is the suicide rates with our armed forces, our veterans. Now, 70% of the suicides that are taking place with our veterans is actually related to family law matters. Okay, last year in 2009, 6,000 veterans took their own lives. Now, this isn't a race issue, this isn't a gender issue, this is a corruption issue of our judiciary. Okay, our judiciary is doing a power grab on our ways of making laws. Okay, they're actually attacking our families. By attacking our families, they are keeping us suppressed. Okay, and this brings up the issue about suppression. When we're suppressed, okay, they control us. I'm asking that everybody that feels that they've been beaten down, their money has been taken away, to stand up and be an activist. Stand up and get out there, contact your legislators, get involved, make sure your voice is heard. Don't sit back and say you can't do anything. Get up, realize you've been suppressed, and do something about it. Don't sit back and allow them to be suppression anymore. Okay, one of our founding fathers, James Madison, he had a statement. The statement he made was the accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands, whether of one, a few, or many, and whether hereditary, self-appointed, or elected, may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny. Now, this is an important statement for a simple fact that this is the first time in history every part of our legislation is controlled by one member of our society. They are lawyers.